chapter 4, verse 1 and 2, saying that financial does not expect forgiveness. Hey there. Welcome to the Radical Godly Stewardship Podcast. This is the show where heaven's economy collides with earth's assignments. And I am your host, Dr. Lexi Johnson, your financial rebel, kingdom disruptor, and your coach into accountability and obedience. Listen, around here, we don't beg for money. Nope, that is not what we do. We align, we obey, and we produce, multiply, and dominate, because stewardship isn't just about money. It's about mindsets. It's about multiplying what's been placed in your hands. So if you're tired of playing small, praying broke, and calling it faith, then you are in the right place, and we're going to dive in. Now, I need to let you know that I have pre-recorded this. And at the time that I have pre-recorded this, it is early in the morning. And so therefore it's a little dark. Okay. Yes, I pre-recorded this because I have a lot of running around to do today. But nonetheless, I am grateful to be here, and I hope that you are too. Let me know who you are, where you are watching from. Would love to acknowledge you taking time to join me today. Now, listen, I want to open with a reality most people don't want to hear. And that is that war moves markets. That's the reality. Unfortunately, it always has. It always will. You can go back and study some of the most wealthy families in the world, and you will find that, they, especially those that has businesses or banks or things like that, that a lot of them were catering to both sides of the war because there's money to be made in it, unfortunately. So war moves markets. It always has. It always will. And while kingdom citizens, while we never celebrate war, we also don't ignore the economic realities that follow it. So right now, the growing tensions and conflict evolving Iran are already affecting the global oil markets, precious metals like gold, defense and tech stocks, shipping costs, food supply chains, and more. And whether people realize it or not, when geopolitical conflict rises, your everyday expenses eventually follow. So that's your gas, your groceries, your utilities, your transportation. The ripple effects are very real. So today, we're going to talk about what's happening and how it's affecting the markets. We're going to talk about where price pressure is going to show up next, where it might show up next. And we're going to talk about how kingdom citizens stay vigilant without fear. Our key scripture for today is Ecclesiastes 11:2, and it says, invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. Listen, this scripture isn't just poetic wisdom. It is financial strategy. It is telling us very plainly to diversify. Why? Because uncertainty is inevitable. Okay. I think that I mentioned in the last podcast. Oh, no, sorry. It wasn't a podcast, but it was a video that I had done for my subscribers. And I said that, and if you're wondering how to become a subscriber, you can do that on Facebook. It's just 99 cents a month. Okay. So I said that, and I'm at the Lexi Johnson on Facebook. Okay, there we go. So I said that it is inevitable. Uncertainty is inevitable, right? Like, we'll say, oh, we're living in uncertain times. But the truth is, we're always living in uncertain times. Now, maybe for different reasons, but we are always living in uncertain times. And so the scripture is telling us that we need to diversify, okay, because uncertainty is inevitable. And that's exactly the season that we're in right now. So what the Iran conflict means, what does it mean economically? When conflict rises in the Middle East, The first market that reacts is oil. And why is that? Well, because the region controls a massive share of global oil supply, and they have key shipping routes like the Straits of Hormuz, which handles a huge portion of the world's oil shipments. So even the threat of disruption can move prices. Okay. So what does that mean? That there doesn't even have to be real disruption yet, just the threat of it will move the oil prices. So when we say move oil prices, what does that mean? That means that oil futures can spike. And when oil futures spike, the gas prices follow. Obviously, when gas prices follow, then your transportation costs are going to rise. Okay. So if you think about how people get around, buses, planes, trains, automobiles, all of these things, because the gas prices are going up. Now, these industries that are serving you in that way, their costs are going to rise, right? And then food distribution costs are going to increase. Why? Because it takes fuel, right, to get the food to where it needs to go. So whether it's fuel for ships, whether it's fuel for cars, fuel for boats, fuel for planes, however the food is being distributed, the costs are going to increase. And when food distribution costs rise, guess what? So does your grocery bill. It's a domino effect. And so we have already seen markets react with volatility in equities. What does that mean? That the prices are up and down, and they're having these spikes up and down, right? That's volatility, right? Meaning that you really can't predict, what's going on like in the short term, right? And equities simply means stock. So we have seen that. We have seen movement in energy stocks. Why? Because all of this stuff, this war, this conflict takes energy, doesn't it? We have seen spikes in gold. And why have we seen spikes in gold? We have seen that because people um, will demand more gold in times of uncertainty, when there is fear, when there is, we're not sure which way things are going to go. So let us be careful, right? And prepare. And remember, we've talked about gold before. Gold is a hedge. So let's talk about gold just a little bit more as it relates to war or geopolitical instability. Whenever there is geopolitical instability, right? Wherever you see that, gold is usually going to go up in its price. Why? Again, because investors move money into assets that they think are going to be stable during the crisis. So we have seen for some time now a lot of people, particularly major investors, moving lots of their assets into gold. Gold is one of the oldest forms of wealth preservation on earth. And why? Because it's God's money. It's been here since Genesis. And if you don't believe me, go back and read, okay? In Genesis, the very first chapters. I'm trying to think if it's chapter 2. Don't quote me, but it's in those early chapters, okay? Gold is one of the oldest forms of wealth preservation on the earth because it doesn't rely on governments, it doesn't rely on banking systems, it doesn't rely on currencies. It's been valuable for thousands of years. I like to say that gold and silver are God's money, right? Historically, during major conflicts or instability, gold demand increases dramatically. So that's why we're seeing renewed interest in gold from central banks to institutional investors to sovereign wealth funds. Okay. And if these people are moving their assets into some gold, we might want to do the same. All right. Now, not a whole lot of your assets, not everything, right? But a decent percentage. Now, what that percentage may be, again, this information is for educational purposes only. I am not here to be a financial advisor. I'm not here to be your financial advisor. I'm just talking in general. Okay. So you might want to contact your financial professional um, as it relates to this. Okay. So that it can be, you know, so that you can have conversations that are customized to what is going on in your situation and how much you should have set aside. Okay. So let's talk about how the market moves during war. Now, historically, war affects several sectors differently. Some sectors, goodness, can I talk this morning? Some sectors will struggle. Others are gonna surge, right? So, for example, industries that often do better in, while there's conflict going on are your defense contractors, cybersecurity companies, drone manufacturers, AI intelligence platforms, satellite technology, data centers. All of these things are going to do better during times of conflict, war, and specifically. Why? Because modern warfare is technology driven these days. Okay. So, your drones, your AI targeting, your satellite surveillance, cyber warfare, all of these things. Okay. This is why the intersection of AI, defense, and data infrastructure has been receiving massive investment attention. Okay. And I know for the last few episodes, I have been mentioning one of these things in one way or another. One of the episodes we talked specifically about data centers, right? And the rise of those. So again, we don't celebrate war, but we do recognize the economic reality. We do recognize how it is affecting us um, as it relates to the economy and what we should be preparing for and doing for our money. So I want to pause here and let's do our stewardship check in. I want to ask you something or a few things, a few questions. And these are just for you to think about, right? Write them down, think about them. You can obviously answer them in the chat as well. But for those of you who don't have an answer right away, just write them down, think about them, okay? When you hear headlines about war, economic uncertainty, and rising prices, what do you usually do? Do you panic? Do you just, you listen to it, but you ignore it because you don't really think there's anything you need to do in your finances? Like you don't understand that it is, the impact that it will have on you personally? Do you get emotionally swept into the media narratives? Or do you step back and ask, how should a kingdom citizen steward wisely in this moment? Because radical stewardship isn't about fear, it's about awareness, and awareness leads to preparation. This is why I'm constantly saying that we don't need to be in the conversations that are divisive. Okay. You might want to chime in every now and then, but don't be so invested in those conversations. People are arguing now about, this president and his decision to go to war and whether it was the right one, not the right one. And they're getting into all these conversations again about, well, y'all voted him for him and you didn't, and da 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 da, and he's right and he's not right, and all of this. We are not to go down the rabbit hole in those types of conversations. Okay. What we are to do is to make sure that we have kingdom clarity and that we are vigilant without the fear and without the divisive conversations. Because right now, we can't control, there's nothing else we can do right now about the administration that is in place, whether we like it, don't like it. Okay. We got a couple more years of that, right? So, the world responds to crisis in two extreme ways. There's either panic or denial. Okay. Panic or denial. But kingdom citizens choose a third path because there is a third path. And that third path is wisdom. That is the third path. So we don't panic. We prepare. We pay attention. We position ourselves wisely. And so that might mean that, yes, we have to diversify our income, how we make our income. And again, if you're a subscriber, then for the last week, you have gotten um, posts and a video about diversifying income and how to go about doing that. We've talked about diversifying investments. We have talked about reducing unnecessary debt, um, increasing your financial discipline, and paying attention to sectors that are growing. That is what we need to be doing right now. That is what vigilance looks like for a kingdom citizen. So, kudos to those of you who are doing those things. We just started our cohort 3 for financial rebellion, our 12-week 12 week or 90-day either or experience, right? These women who are part of this cohort are going to do all of these things with my help, right? And so, because this is a season where we need to be vigilant, right? This season, out of any, is where we need to be vigilant, not out of greed, okay, but out of stewardship responsibility, because when you steward well, you're not just protecting yourself, but you are also positioning yourself to do these things. That is to help others, because that's what we're called to do, to fund kingdom work, because that's what we're called to do, to support your family, and to build generational stability. So, listen, this week, I want you to do something simple but powerful. I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. If inflation spikes again, how exposed am I financially? Are you prepared? Right? If my income were disrupted, do I have savings to withstand it? Am I investing intentionally or just hoping things work out? Then make one strategic adjustment this week, okay, based on your answers to those questions. What is one strategic adjustment that you are going to make? Okay. And that could mean maybe you're cutting one unnecessary expense. Maybe you're starting a small investment account. Maybe you're building your emergency savings. Maybe you're learning about sectors shaping the future economy, right? And if you need some help with that, check out the last episode, the episode that I did, yeah, I think it was last week, where I talk about how, in what order you do things from solvency all the way to investing and leaving a legacy, right? But this week, focus on one move, one adjustment, one act of stewardship. All right. And if you're realizing that it's time to take your finances seriously, while it's too late to be a part of financial rebellion, it is not ever late to reach out to me. Schedule a 30-minute consult. Let's talk about what's going on, what your challenges are, what you're wanting to do, or you don't even know what to do, whatever the case may be. Let's talk about it so that I can share with you how we can work together to get that done. Okay. Because here's the thing, information alone, I know a lot of you watch this podcast regularly, and I'm grateful for you, but information alone doesn't change your life. Implementation does. Okay. And that is what I do, whether it is in financial rebellion or whether it's helping you one on one. I help you to implement. So you can learn more at mm4h.life, mm4h.life. And if you haven't read my book yet, if you haven't purchased my book yet, it's called Stop Begging God for Money. And you can grab that book at authorlexijohnson.com. All right. So here is my final thought on the conflict we've got going on right now. War, conflict, global instability are all part of living in a fallen world. Unfortunately, if you read in the Bible from the Old Testament to the New, you see that there's war, there's conflict, right? We have been dealing with it ever since then. But kingdom citizens are not called to be anxious spectators. We are called to be wise stewards. So pay attention, stay alert, position yourself wisely, because the goal isn't just surviving uncertain times, it is stewarding faithfully through them. Okay. Well, that is a wrap for today's episode of the Radical Godly Stewardship Podcast. We are usually here 30 minutes, but I'm here for as long as I need to be. Okay. That's a wrap. I hope that this has been helpful to you. I am Dr. Lexi Johnson, your financial rebel, reminding you to steward well, to speak boldly, to produce, multiply, and dominate with faith. And I'll see you next time. God bless.